Well, happy Tuesday, Danielle.
Hello.
Hello. Are you ready for another Real Leader conversation?
Sure.
Hey, for those of you guys who are watching on YouTube or on Twitter or in the Facebook Live group, welcome to another Rare Leader conversation. In our series right now, we're actually pondering different questions. And these are random questions that we literally choose to have a discussion on. And there's a quote that says a while ago that all human progress was preceded by a question. And today's question is, what can what kind of advice would I give to my younger self? Because I get younger each and every day because I am living to 120 years of age, and thus far the plan's working out pretty doggone good. So that's our discussion today, and something for you to think about too. You can use this question, go ahead and conversate with your friends, your family, and just have a good conversation, right? So, Danielle, the young Danielle that she is, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
Move somewhere warm so that you have sunshine 9 months of the year versus 3.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I think a lot of the times now when I look back is at what we've been doing. I wish I would have started journaling and reflecting a lot sooner in my days and maybe setting not necessarily that we didn't set goals when we were younger, but um, really focus on what we talk about. Where do we want to be in 5 and 10 years? Like here we are, 12 years into our journey of living in Wisconsin. Like who would have thought? Like 12 years just went by like that.
Yeah, I mean, the journaling does make a difference. And I think, since we've been together, we've always talked about goals and dreams. And I think there's a lot of advice I would give to my younger self. It's probably could be volumes of advice I'd give my younger self. One that probably stands out to me is never stop dreaming. Because I can look back in different periods of my life where we may have achieved different goals, and it was like, oh, it was so exciting, and you may bask in the sunlight of that victory, shine of that victory, maybe too long. I think, and one of my pieces of advice I give my younger self, say, Tony, you know what? Never stop dreaming. Before you hit that next dream, get another one, and just keep on feeding it. Because I look back in times when I did feed the dream machine part of me, it constantly pushed me to strive to be better, strive to be better as a husband, strive to be better as a friend, a father, a son, a business owner, an employee. I think it's easy to get caught up in the everyday habit and routine, don't you think?
Yeah. I think looking at time passes whether we want it to or not, and it goes a lot faster than you are told that it does. Um, and so just to really like be present in each moment and treasure it.
Yeah, because time is the only resource that's non-renewable. You can make more money, you can get more, electricity, but it's non-renewable. It is a non-renewable resource. And I shared this earlier today on a post that our life is determined by our daily decisions. You may make that one mistake that one day, but it's those little things that add up. They eventually, builds that house on good things or not good things. And I think another piece of advice I would give my younger self is never pause in your own personal growth. I think, and what I mean by that is I can look at different periods of my life where I was like 100% dialed in terms of my personal growth, reading constantly each and every month, listening to audios each and every day, constantly feeding my mind, building myself in order to build outside of myself. I think at times is when I've achieved different levels of success is that I got, you know, away from that at times because I had learned so much. I felt so far ahead of some people that I just banked on that. And I think that's where again you not only got to not stop dreaming younger version of Tony. You got to never stop intentionally growing, like intentionally growing. And I think the other piece of advice I would give to myself was is when I would have different times in my life where I experienced pain, to not run away from it, but to reflect on it and to ask myself what gift there is in this and how can I share this gift with others. I think that's some more advice I would give to my younger self. And I think sometimes I would just want to run away from it, whether when I was real younger and wanted to run away from bill collectors calling me up and change my phone number. And I'm not proud of that moment, but it was definitely a growing moment. And I think, some of the toughest times in my life is when I experienced a lot of pain, but I grew a lot because of it. And it helped. I wouldn't be at where I'm at, I think, at times if I didn't experience those pains. That's another piece of advice I'd give myself.
What
What
else?
about you?
Ask you first.
um, do it for the cause versus the applause. I think there was times where I would, do things for the applause, for the cheers. And why that it was, or sometimes still is at times, I really don't know. Like I think growing up, I wanted to be someone. I wanted to be, recognized. I think like when I look at like my dad, and I think about this now, actually I was just thinking about this on Sunday, where my dad and my mom did whatever it took to put food on the table. And I remember one day where my dad was working on the potato farms. Now, when my dad would work at potato farms, when he get off of work, he would be covered in dirt. Like literally looked like he was gonna go fight a war because he was like in cover his camouflage was dirt. And I remember one time like he came with me, he was somewhere and I was embarrassed. I like, oh God, I think about that when I was like, man, yeah, mind you, I was a young, 10, 12-year-old kid. But it made me realize, like, man, like, he wasn't, he was not, he was doing it for the cause, right? I mean, it may not have been glamorous work. He may not love the work, but he did his work really, really well. And he worked really, really hard at it. And I think that's one of the things that taught me. Now, when I'm looking back on those lessons, like, my dad was not afraid to get his hands dirty. He was not afraid to do things that may not have been convenient for him to go ahead and provide for the family. So I think too is that if you keep your causes in front of the reasons why you do things in front of you, it keeps you from drifting. It keeps you from losing focus on what's important. And I think too, like it pushes you to get comfort, get comfortable with discomfort. So that's not a piece of advice. When I say, do it for the cause, not for the applause. What about you?
Well, just to piggyback on that, like just focusing on what you can do for others versus how is it going to be beneficial for you. Like not expecting anything out of what you're doing, but when you're focusing on helping others, you in turn will help yourself.
That's hard to think about as a younger kid, though. Like, I mean,
That's why we're giving
even
it to our younger selves.
but I mean, isn't that easier said than done, though? Because I mean, don't you have to have some viewpoint of like how it's going to impact you?
When we focus on others, though, that's where you start living is by focusing on helping others.
I
And
agree
so
on how far. I think though sometimes though I would focus on and pass another piece of advice I give my younger self is I would do things to make others happy. At the same time, it would be a cost of my own happiness.
People pleaser.
Yeah, people pleaser. I've gotten better at that. I think maybe sometimes I'm too good at saying no. I know some people don't like that I get a chance to lead. Because I mean, I actually believe, I think the other piece of advice I've given my younger self is you're closer than you think and you're farther away than you think. You're closer than you think to achieving your goals and the things you want to achieve. But you're further away than you think from what you can truly possibly do. I think we're the only creatures on this planet that limits our own growth. And a dog can only be a dog. A cat can only be a cat. A tree can only be a tree. But you and I, we can truly be all sorts of different things. So I don't know where I was getting with that point. But, we're talking about, doing things for others. And when I look at this question, what kind of advice would I give my younger self is sometimes if it's singing at you, it's in your heart and it's like you just feel this pull. Not everyone's going to be a fan of it. Not everyone's going to be all excited to do it with you. I think sometimes the kind of advice that I would give my younger self, and my younger self did do this, I would encourage him to do more of it, is sometimes you got to walk the path alone. It's funny with others. You go fast alone, we go further with others, as the African proverb says. But sometimes I feel like I feel comfort in having others come along with me. And there was these times where I just had to go out and, forge the path myself. So that's another piece of advice I give myself is, sometimes just go out there and do it. And people are going to come along with you. Great. If not, hey, it's their prerogative. What else for you?
I think just staying consistent with the personal growth. You kind of talked about that. Staying in it versus thinking that you've made it, and stopping. And so I think just each day, just doing one thing, progress is in little steps is better than the intention of wanting to do it. So just staying consistent in that process of growing each and every day.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've been really working hard at it in the mornings. If I was giving myself a younger advice just from last month, right, is I've really been doing a thing like less of it, of not going to emails as much now. In the mornings, like when I get to work, I work. And sometimes at night I'll get I'll slip in there every so often. I'm getting better at it. I know I'm not perfect at it. But then, like, for example, this morning I listened to a good audio by Ray Dalio. Just walking around my office a little bit for my 8:15, and then I even read a little bit of my Think Grow Rich book. And where I think you were saying is for me is I'd rather be consistently good than occasionally great. But I think by being consistently good, you will become great over time. What kind of advice would you give to your younger self when it comes to relationships?
They take work every day, not to take relationships for granted, and that you continually need to feed it like you would a plant if you want it to live, or flowers or whatever. But they take work every single day, like to feed into it and to nourish it, to let people know that you appreciate them and not that you just take for granted that they know that.
How do you though? Because I feel like this is sometimes was my like for me. I was actually thinking about that this morning. One of the things, the amazing things that Danielle does for me in the morning, she gets herself up early in the morning and she makes me a wonderful cup of coffee. And but one of the things I really enjoy besides the cup of coffee, because it just is fantastic, is she leaves me little notes. And I really appreciate those little notes you leave me. And then part of me sometimes wonders, like, I know I am a person of, at least I feel like I am, of a consistently encouraging and speaking into people. And one of the things I sometimes feel like is it appreciated? Is that person becoming numb to it? Like, you set that bar, and I like to be consistently good at that bar. But then I feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Like, how would that thinking apply to your younger self and giving advice to that relationship or working on things?
I just intentionally, purposefully not put one on your note to make you appreciate it.
Aha!
Give you a
We
here
figured
and
out
there.
our game. Oh, we figured out our game. We figured out our game.
Um,
Because how do you like do things consistently? I mean, I think it's an attitude of the receiver then too, and then also an attitude of the giver. How do you do things consistently where someone's doing something for you consistently and not take it for granted? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
well, I think just in the part of maybe you change it up every once in a while in how you deliver the message. Maybe it's not the same message on your coffee every single day, but maybe it's an email or a text message, sending a message that way, or just making little tweaks to how you're delivering it, to keep it something that you're still doing it consistently, that you've created a habit of it sewing into the relationship, but it might not necessarily be the same delivery of it. I don't know.
So like leaving you, something in the fridge with a little note on it.
Maybe.
I got Ezekiel pretty good the other day.
He did.
He's
He was very excited about his chocolate muffin.
he's pretty excited about it. What kind of advice would you give your younger self when it comes to no, I'm not talking like personal relationships, but friendships?
I think it's important to realize that everyone's brought into your life for a purpose, and that your friendships may change over time, and there's friendships that will come and go, and that in within every relationship or friendship that you have is a lesson and something to help you grow in an area of your life that maybe you don't see at the time, but I think that they all serve their purposes. And it's okay to walk away from friendships, because I think as you continue growing through life, your paths are going to continue to grow and not necessarily in the same direction.
Yeah. And I think too when we talk about that portion of walking away from relationships or friendships, I'm not even talking maybe think like not even people but things. And we used to have a relationship with WWF wrestling every Monday and Friday, you know. And in order for us to achieve the goals, like literally last night, I'm gonna circle back around this. I coach volleyball, and one of the players is like, "How do you have time to do all this? Like, I don't understand." Well, I said, "Well, think about how much time you spend on social media on your phone. What else could that be used for? How much time you spend watching TV shows? What can that be used for?" He's like, then I told him how much Ezekiel made this weekend. They're like, "What? You made how much?" I'm like, yeah, they're like, "We need to start talking to Ezekiel about things." I think that's one of the challenging things when you're growing up, when you're younger, is that you may have had so many like situations that your friends were there for you, or you were there for them, and you think, well, like, I'm moving in a different direction now. Like, why can't that friend come with me? And I think they can, but I think it's harder for them sometimes too because you're evolving. When my friends were into, like, they love to drink, right? They were just that was just their favorite pastime, that and video games. And we were there for each other for some very tough things. So I think part of me is to, go back to what you said about walking away is it wasn't that they were bad people or I was a bad person or they're good people. It was just like, it was just a different stage in life. And we just didn't fit with one another anymore. And that's okay. And I think I needed to do that. Advice would be like, do it even more. Do it even more. What about what you say kind of advice would you give to your younger self when it comes to communication?
I think it's important to be open with your communication, and understand that everyone has a story that they tell themselves in what they want to say and how they're going to deliver that, and thinking that you're going to hurt somebody's feelings, or you're going to make somebody angry by what you are talking about. But I think it's important to understand that your feelings and emotions are equally as important. And so by not sharing with somebody else or communicating with them, you're not only holding yourself back, but you're holding that person back too from an opportunity to grow.
Can you share a little bit more insight on that?
I just think that with like our relationship of communicating, like not telling one another if something's upsetting us or if we appreciate something, like you have no idea if I'm upset about something or I appreciate something unless I'm telling you. So without being able to communicate that openly, we just hold ourselves in a box, and it can either fester and explode, or it can lead to the taking for granted and the feeling of being taken for granted, if you're not communicating all that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes too is like, I think you may have given me the grace. I'm like, oh, he's just working, or he's doing these things, and I'm just feeling this way. But sometimes, like, I appreciate it when you share, hey, I'm like not feeling love right now, or I mean, it's not my job to make you feel love, but I can, not it's my your happiness is not my responsibility. However, I do play a part in it, and I appreciate when you're like, you're doing this, like, and how you phrase it is important too. Instead of you are doing this, like, here's what I feel like versus attacking you. I receive it completely different. I gotta say, whatever you told your younger self about how they evolve in that and say, here's what I feel versus coming at me. I appreciate that advice you gave to yourself. But it means a lot to me for when you communicate with me. Like, it allows me to pivot, like, oh, and maybe I probably evolved to that. I don't get defensive. I mean, that's probably different. I mean, I see that feedback as a gift now versus anything. So as we go ahead and close up here, Danielle, anyone who's watching this or listening to this, if you're watching or listening, feel free to put things in the comments. There's a lot of things you could probably give yourself for advice for your younger self. But if you were to give yourself advice to the person from January of 2023, what would you give that person today?
From 6 weeks ago,
6 weeks.
I think it's just important to continue to give yourself grace, to know that you're human and that each day is a gift, and to continue to just work on the day that you're in and not worry about what happened yesterday, what you did or didn't do, but just to continue to be present in the day and do what you can today to make yourself better for tomorrow.
Ironically, that's along the lines of, your daily decisions determine the quality of your life. I think my one word this year, if I was to give myself advice, is diligent. You know, I've noticed how you know, that word was a struggle for me to think about. God, diligent, like I want diligence, diligent, like it was different. But if I was to give myself advice to January 1st, is really identify clearly, without a shadow of a doubt, the things that you're gonna be diligent on, home and at work, and just put the blinders on and go to it. So it's been another great conversation. And we got like just a few minutes left, real quick. In case Ezekiel one day goes ahead and picks this up, what kind of advice would you give to Ezekiel as he's growing?
To listen to your dad. Even though he may irritate you by asking you to continue to do things, just know that he's trying to help you be a better person.
Yes. Ezekiel, I would give you advice is be you. Embrace the God-given gifts that you've been given. And stand tall and be you. Because you don't have to compare yourself to anybody else except the person looking in the mirror. That's what you gotta do. Well, what a call, huh? Another rare leader conversation. We talked about being rare leaders is someone who's resourceful, adaptable, resilient, and willing to engage. And I think having a conversation like this, as you guys can tell, we hit a nerve with one another here today in a positive way. And to engage with others takes courage, and engage with others and share things takes courage. But yet, you sharing and being open and using your life advice can make an impact on others. So until next week, I'm Tony Jalen, joined by the wonderful Daniil Jalen. Onward and upwards.